The Zigzaggy Neighborhood by Dean Howell and Darlene Howell. Chapter 1, Knocking and Ringing. Michael looked out at the hills behind his home. He saw his sister Elizabeth weeding the flower beds. Their home was in the valley, where there was plenty of sunshine and water, as their parents only liked to plant flowers and vegetables. Michael wanted a treehouse, but their parents had never planted a tree. Michael tugged on Elizabeth's arm. "Lizzie, I really want to build a treehouse today. We have the tools and the wood. We just need to find a tree." Elizabeth motioned toward the hill and said, "But you know we have no trees. All the big, strong trees are up on the hill in the Zigzaggy neighborhood." They had often gazed in strange admiration at the neighborhood rising above them on the hill. The houses looked odd and wonderful. It was like the architects and builders had gone utterly off their rockers cuckoo. Each house was of a different color. Some were flat, some tall and skinny, some were like rockets with windows. "You know, Michael, anyone who would live in one of those strange houses just might be open to us building a treehouse in one of their trees." The children had their design in hand and pulled their wagon full of wood and tools as they reached the first house beyond the gate of the Zigzaggy neighborhood. This marvelous but crazy house was not as large as the others and painted bright yellow and trimmed in purple. They liked it. Ding-a-ling, ding-a-ling, they pushed the doorbell. No answer. So they pressed again. Ding-a-ling, ding-a-ling. They could hear the shuffling steps of an older person slowly coming to the door and the tap, tap, tap of a cane. They waited and they waited, and finally the shuffling stopped. The door slowly began to open. There stood in front of them an old woman. She had her purplish hair in a bun and wore a very pretty apron and walked with a yellow cane. She looked at them and frowned. "You woke me up from my nap. What do you want?" "We were just wondering if you would allow us to build a treehouse in that big old tree in your backyard. We would try to be very quiet and not disturb your napping," said Michael. "No, no, no," squeaked the old woman. "I don't like children in my yard. They are much too noisy and tromp on my flowers. No, just run away and play somewhere else." They turned and scampered away. This old lady did not like children, and they were children, so they were not going to be able to put a treehouse in her tree. But there were many more trees in the Zigzaggy neighborhood. They weren't discouraged at all. The next house was very tall. It surely had 5 stories. It was also very thin. It looked like a popsicle stick with windows painted on it. They rang this doorbell. Buzz, buzz. Very quickly, an extremely tall man with a bald head, upon which sat a tiny baby blue hat, answered the door. "Yes," he said. "What do you want?" "Please, sir, could we build a tree house in that big tree in your backyard? It is so tall and the branches just right for a tree house." "Well," said the man, "when I was a boy, I built a tree house in our backyard and had a lot of fun in it." Michael began to have hope. "But," said the man, "I fell out of it and broke my arm. No, it is too dangerous. No tree houses." And he walked away. Michael and Elizabeth decided to try another house. This one was painted a light green with a dark green trim. It looked quite nice. No get off the grass sign and a big tree. "Oh, this will be the one for sure," they were both hoping. There was no doorbell, so they knocked. Knock, knock, and the door flew open. There stood a rather fat lady with a tiny little black apron and one turquoise curler in her hair. She was holding her baby. They could hear lots of children's voices, laughing, and a dog barking. "Yes, children," she said. Michael hurried and told her about the tree house and that they wanted to build it in her tree. "Oh my, that would be fun, wouldn't it?" she said. "But I am afraid that my children are much too busy. The older ones take care of the younger ones, and they all have chores to do. And I am so busy managing this house and family, the thought of a tree house is giving me a headache. So I think not. Thank you for asking, though. Maybe you can invite my 8 children over to your house sometime to play. Oh, that would be nice." Michael and Elizabeth waved goodbye to the lady and her children. They thought that maybe it would be fun to have them over to play. They would ask their mother. They were now becoming a bit discouraged. The house they approached next was the funniest of all. Part of the roof was dome-shaped with windows all around, but the rest of the roof was normal. Windows were up and down the sides, and there was a flower box in front of each window. The house was painted pink, and it shined in the sunlight. It was so pretty with its flower boxes, and in the front yard was a great big tree. It was perfect for a treehouse. The house had an old-fashioned hanging bell for a doorbell, and you just pulled the cord to make it ring. Ding dong, and the door opened. There stood a lady smiling. At her side was a boy and a girl. The boy and girl stayed very close to their mom as she asked her visitors kindly, "And how are you today?" Michael just bubbled over. "We want to build a tree house in your tree. We have the plan and the lumber and are all set to go. Could we please build a tree house in your tree? Your children could help us build it and play in it too. We don't have a tree, so that is why we are asking. We live down in the valley. Our house is the one with the green and red roof." The lady kept smiling, and she looked down at her little girl and boy, and they were both smiling back and looked excited. "Of course, you can build your treehouse in our tree." Michael and Elizabeth quickly ran home to tell their mother what they were going to do. She was so happy, for she knew that this family had just moved into the Zigzaggy neighborhood and the children needed some friendship. In fact, she was baking some chicken pot pie to send up to them for lunch. Chapter 2, Building. The children were so excited to build a treehouse. They passed the boards one by one up to Michael to put in place for the floor. Board by board, the floor and the walls and the roof were hammered into place. Now they needed to paint it. Michael remembered that their father had some paint in the shed. There were many cans, and they found one can that was half full of bright red paint. They ran and asked their father, "Please, Dad, can we use this paint to paint our treehouse?" He looked at them, smiled, and said, "Yes, of course. I will be happy to see your treehouse all painted cherry red." It had taken all afternoon to build the treehouse, and they were tired. Mother suggested that they eat dinner and go to bed. The painting would have to wait until tomorrow. They were so excited to paint the treehouse that they had trouble falling to sleep. After much tossing and turning, somehow sleep did come. Early the next morning, the sun peeped through their window and woke them up. They stretched and yawned and suddenly remembered that today was the day for painting the treehouse. Out of bed, they jumped and quickly put on their clothes. Mother insisted that they eat breakfast. So they quickly ate their cold cereal and rushed out the door. They met their new friends, Andy and Miriam, who were dressed in old paint-covered overalls. "Have you guys painted many things before?" questioned Michael. Andy replied, "Miriam makes model airplanes, and we paint them together." Painting the treehouse was fun, but kind of messy. With their brushes full of red paint, it seemed they were dripping paint everywhere, especially on themselves. Swish, swish went their brushes, and with each stroke, the treehouse looked so much better. Finally, the treehouse was painted and was truly finished. It was red and looked beautiful. As they stood back and looked at their good work, they thought it looked like a great big red apple in an apple tree. The red apples already on the tree looked like red candy drops. It was so pretty. Chapter 3, The Police. They climbed back up the ladder, Andy and Miriam followed by Elizabeth. But Michael paused. He thought he heard a police siren. He backed down the ladder, and sure enough, a police car pulled up, and 2 officers of the law jumped out and rushed for the treehouse. Michael ducked out of their way as they scrambled up the ladder and quickly emerged inside with the 3 children. Michael was scared and ran to find some help. His mother was not around, so he ran to the house of the woman with all the children. Her oldest son answered the door and told Michael his mother was at the neighbor's house. This was the house of the tall man. Michael knocked on that door and was ushered inside. There sat the tall man surrounded by Michael's mother and father. As he looked closer, he saw the mother of all the children and even the lady who liked to nap. "Police have gone up to our treehouse," Michael blurted out. "Yes, we sent them," said his father. Michael could not believe what he was hearing. Why would all these adults meet and send the police to their new treehouse? "Michael, sit down and rest," said his mother. "Something extraordinary has happened here for years. Something your father and I just discovered." Everyone seemed to have a gleam in their eye. Michael was very confused. In the treehouse, the police told the children they would need to immediately tear the treehouse down. The 3 children started to cry. They were so confused. And where was Michael? The police told the children to quickly climb down and that they would take care of the situation. Pretty soon, the children saw smoke billowing out of their treehouse. Their treehouse was on fire. The police jumped down as the beautiful treehouse went up in smoke. Down the street, like a parade, came Michael and all the adults. Michael now knew the mysterious story. "Dad, Mom, Michael," Elizabeth shouted. "What is happening? The world has gone crazy." Michael started to laugh. "Lizzie, you won't believe what I have been told." "Elizabeth, this neighborhood is magical. All of these houses were normal when they were built, but over time they grew in odd and wonderful ways. It started with the first house and continued with every house built. During the night, they might grow a tower or turn a different color. The police and residents knew this, but we didn't, nor did Andy and Miriam's mom, and our mom and dad knew nothing of this. When our treehouse became known to the neighbors and the police, they were all afraid of how it might grow and take over the tree. "We had to burn it down," said a friendly policewoman. "Burning down structures here is the only way we have found to stop them from growing, morphing, and changing. We just couldn't risk it. You created it to look like an apple. This weird magic would perhaps have it turning into a giant watermelon or 20-pound connected coconuts." Miriam laughed. That sounded so funny. The children could not believe this story and the end of their treehouse, but looking around the Zigzaggy neighborhood, they realized it must be true, as nobody would create a house like any found in the Zigzaggy neighborhood on purpose. The treehouse of Michael's dreams was now gone, but the children saw around them all the people that they had met along the way and now called friends. When they rode their bikes, they would have many friends to wave at. There was the napping lady with purple hair. Now they knew her name was Juanita. There was the tall, thin man who lived in the very tall house named Ralph, and the tired mother who lived in the greenhouse they just called Mama Marty. The mother of Andy and Miriam was now like a second mother, and they called her Aunt Tessie. The Zigzaggy neighborhood, with all its strange houses and very interesting people, was surely the best and most magical place in the whole world. Or at least they thought so. What do you think? The end of the story. The Zigzaggy neighborhood.